the dominant abstinence-only disease model approach to addiction was limited and in some cases unhelpful and unappealing to the majority of people that struggle with drugs. And I ultimately came to discover harm reduction as an alternative framework or philosophy for setting up treatment relationships. And that's kind of how I envision the harm reduction principles as a frame. Fast forward, I developed an approach to harm reduction therapy that we call Integrative Harm Reduction Psychotherapy, which we think can really address the spectrum of problematic substance use across the entire continuum. And I wrote a book and I wrote some papers. You see here, Harm Reduction Psychotherapy, a new treatment for drug and alcohol problems, really introducing that, and have written a number of papers that sort of refine the model, which I can make available to people if they are interested in reading them for free. I should also mention my book is available in Spanish for free. We created a free PDF to make it available to the Spanish-speaking world. And then based on writing this book, I started to get invitations internationally to train people. The first one was in Poland about 14 years ago. And I developed an intensive training, which we now call our level 1 IHRP training. We did our first one in New York 9 years ago, and Janique joined that initial cohort of trainees. And so I must say that if I can share the personal story, the second day of the training, Janique stood up and she said, "Tatarsky, I am enraged at you. This material upset me so much. I couldn't sleep at all. It just churned, you know," and we got into it. You know, I really welcomed her sharing her feelings and conflicts. And by the end of the 3 days, she was sold on harm reduction, really as a framework that is not at odds with abstinence as a goal or abstinence as a treatment approach, but really extends the reach, and this is the name of a paper that I wrote, to all people who struggle with substances in all stages of change around all positive change goals. So, and, you know, so it's just so wonderful that, Janique, you know, you've taken those ideas and incorporated them into traditional recovery coaching and kind of are helping to elevate the field. I'll just say one further thing that about 10 years ago, I decided there should be really a home for integrative harm reduction psychotherapy. And I opened the Center for Optimal Living in New York City, which has a treatment center. We now have 250 patients. We have a whole clinical team. We also do professional training in this work and organizational consultation. And it's really a platform for kind of advancing this new way of thinking about how we can help people. So that's a little about me and how I got here. So shall we go into some basic definitions of harm reduction? I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of different ideas about what harm reduction is. But let's move forward. And harm reduction, as I understand it, is a set of principles, a set of ideas, and a set of practices. I think that most people know harm reduction through its practices, public health practices, clean syringe access, overdose prevention. But I saw that the principles of harm reduction can be a kind of frame that can inform psychotherapy, counseling, coaching, and substance use treatment. And integrative harm reduction psychotherapy is my brand or my version of that. And I'll break that down in the next little while. So I think we need to begin with this idea that problematic and addictive substance use, I believe, is one of our most urgent humanitarian crises globally. And I'm terribly worried that in the pandemic, this is going to get much, much worse. And we're already seeing dramatic increases in overdose, in relapse for people that have been stable in sobriety, and a whole variety of other negative drug-related consequences. Let's move. So here is a central fact, and I think that we need to think about, why harm reduction? Why do we need to meet people and embrace them if they're not willing to stop? And I think that when we look at the total population of people who use substances in problematic ways, I believe that at the point that people become concerned about their substance use, the overwhelming majority of them are not willing to commit to stopping. And so an abstinence-based approach is simply going to be irrelevant. It's not going to meet them where they are. And there is some data that supports this idea. Let's keep moving. Another important fact is that many people have multiple addictive behaviors with different goals. So some people may wish to stop the opioids or the methamphetamine, but not stop alcohol, or stop alcohol, but not stop cannabis. So, an abstinence-only approach, which requires that people become completely abstinent from all substances, again, is not going to be kind of relevant to this group of people. And if we extend the idea of addictive behavior as going beyond substances, drugs, but to other potentially addictive activities, food, gambling, sex, internet, gadget use, etc. We're talking about, I think the majority of humans on the planet have some degree of addictive behavior, and most of these behaviors cannot be stopped. So abstinence is not an option. So this harm reduction framework needs to be relevant to, I think, the majority of humans. Now, these folks, Prochaska, Norcross, and DiClemente, did a massive study, which they talked about in Changing for Good, a wonderful book. And in that study, they looked at positive, successful self-changers. And they were curious about, what was it that people did to get to the point where they made successful positive change? And they came up with this model that there were actually stages that people needed to go through before they were ready to take action around positive change. And many of you are probably familiar with this, but what's important is that you see in this triangle, the majority of the folks in this population are in pre-action stages of change. So not only and that applies to people who engage in all high-risk behaviors, including problematic substance use. So if most people are not ready to stop, and the majority of people are not even ready to take action, we need to have a framework that can really engage people around non-abstinence goals and in pre-action stages of change. And that's really what the harm reduction framework enables us to do. Let's keep moving. I think that abstinence only, I call it the tyranny of abstinence only, because it seems like it's an ideology that has seeped into every aspect of our culture and become institutionalized. That is, when we identify that someone or even ourselves are struggling with a substance, there's a tendency to jump to the notion that you've got to stop. And if people are not ready, willing, or able to stop, and that is going to be the expectation, it's really going to set up conflict and failure. And I think that there's a lot of data and evidence from lots of different places we could talk about probably for days that really doesn't support this approach as an effective approach to treatment. The thing that jumps out at me most prominently is that it's in the midst of this abstinence-only ideology that has dominated treatment that we have the worst overdose crisis in history. And if that's not a measure of failure, I'm not sure what is. So I think that this suggests to us that we need a new, alternative, more flexible way of working with people. And for me, that's what the harm reduction principles really are about. Next slide. So there's another issue that I think we should all be thinking about, that if we move away from an old disease model, we need to have an alternative model. And the idea that people use drugs because they work, they take on multiple personal and social meanings. And it's not just about our biology. It's about the ways that drugs can be turned to for coping, for self-care, to deal with suffering. And so I've begun to think about what we call addiction as an experience or a relationship to a substance, as a meaningful response to the conditions of our lives and their physical and emotional impact on us. And that often these meanings or these reasons that people are turning to substances drive continued drug use and often need to be identified before we can think about changing that relationship. It's like opening up the hood of the car. We need to take a look at, what are the forces, the motivations, the needs, the parts of the person that are getting expressed in that relationship to the drug, such that we can think about, are there other more effective, more healthy, more personally self-affirming ways of caring for those issues that will be less harmful? So what is harm reduction? I think that it is most wonderfully captured by this phrase, any positive change, a phrase that Dan Big came up with. Alan Marlatt called it compassionate pragmatism. We want to help people, but we need to be constantly checking, are our methods actually working? That's the pragmatic piece, for this individual. So it's ideas and strategies that essentially don't require abstinence. Or my more radical view is that it's about not imposing our values, our agendas on the person that we're trying to be helpful to. So that really clears a space to support people in discovering their truth, discovering what goals and what approach to change best suit them. And so we can think of this harm reduction umbrella as an umbrella that really can engage people along all of those stages of change and around all positive change goals. So that safer use, reduced use, moderation, and abstinence all would fall under that harm reduction umbrella. I also think of it as a kind of radical acceptance, really starting where people are, accepting where they are with respect, with compassion, with empathy, and that then becomes the framework to really support people on their positive change journeys. And you can begin to think about how these principles inform or what they suggest about helping relationships. So now we can really meet people where they are rather than where we wish they were or would like them to be. We can meet people as unique people in unique circumstances, and we can support people to begin this process of positive change where they're ready to begin, rather than requiring or demanding that people jump to a place that they're not ready to jump to. That's a setup for failure. So again, we meet people with respect, with empathy, with compassion, and with curiosity. And that really sets the stage for good relationships, kind of supportive, facilitating relationships. The next one is then a principle about incremental change. If we can think about all of these behaviors on a continuum of risk, our job then is to support people in moving down the continuum of risk, right? And that notion of small incremental positive change, I think, is really how we change all complex behaviors. Sometimes we can jump to the goal of abstinence or moderation, but more likely it's really a kind of a gradual process. Think about, preparing to run the marathon or learning to ride a bicycle. There's a process involved of moving toward that ultimate ideal goal. And there's something about this that I think of as inherently affirming, that we affirm all positive change as a step in the right direction toward people's ultimate goals. So it's really affirming, it's empowering, it's respectful. And then finally, the final principle that I think about is collaboration. Rather than this old model that, we're the experts and we know what you need and and we're going to tell you what to do. And if you don't do it, we kick you out of treatment. This model says, let's work together. Consider that people who use drugs are experts in their experience. They have skills and strengths that we want to mobilize in the process. Carl Rogers, who many say is one of the godfathers of this approach, talked about mutuality, a meeting of two people on an equal basis. You know, of course, we come with our expertise, but so do the people that we're trying to be helpful to. This enables us then to think of us as a therapeutic team, you know, providers and clients working together toward the client's goals. And then we can come up with shared goals and strategies. This is also inherently empowering. I would like to support people in getting in the driver's seat of their relationship to their addictions or their problematic behaviors so that they can develop skills and strategies for working toward their ideal goals. Those are really the core principles. Finally, harm reduction is a social justice movement because we know that stigma and the war on people who use drugs are the greatest harms associated with drug use. So there's this wonderful global movement that is to restore and protect the basic human rights of people who use drugs. And I might add that this is not a fringe movement because the World Health Organization, the United Nations, many organizations of global leaders have come together and rallied around these harm reduction principles. Now we have very limited time, so I can't go into all of this in detail, but this is just to say that all of these harm reduction public health interventions have been highly supported by evidence to reduce overdose, to reduce death, and to increase the chances that people will make positive change through a variety of treatments. So we might think about these public health interventions as the starting point for a relationship, you know, providing people with life-saving strategies and medications that can help them stabilize and stay alive. And then around these public health interventions, we can wrap harm reduction counseling, harm reduction relationships, which then support people in making quantum change in their lives. And I think I have one more slide, which is, this is a slide that it really models the integrative harm reduction psychotherapy therapeutic tasks that we do, and we go through in detail in our level 1 training with demonstration, with discussion, with role play. Each of these tasks is loaded with skills and strategies that we can learn as providers, we can teach our clients to empower them. The first task really is establishing a therapeutic alliance. You know, if we don't have an alliance, we really can't get to any of the other important work. So for me, the harm reduction principles really frame and facilitate setting up an alliance. So people feel safe, they feel respected, and they feel like they can trust us. Creating safety is the cornerstone. Then around that alliance, we build a relationship, and that relationship itself can be healing of prior trauma, of the issues that have maybe been embedded in or been dealt with by drug use. Then we need to think about enhancing self-management skills. Very often, if people are overwhelmed by distress and discomfort, it can be unrealistic to think about changing behavior before people have actually developed alternative ways of calming themselves, of sitting with discomfort. So arming people with skills, with mindfulness, with breathing techniques, with cognitive self-talk, can really help people develop an ability to sit still, to sit with their urges, with their cravings. And now we can move into what we call assessment as treatment. We can start making sense of that complicated addictive relationship. You know, what role does it play? What are the meanings? What are the functions? What are the issues that are embedded in or responded to? And as we can start to really clarify and flesh all of that out, we now move into task 5, which is that people are typically ambivalent about making change. And we need to embrace the ambivalence, you know, the part that wants to keep using because it's serving some vital function, and the part that wants to change because of the potential risk and harm. And if we can invite a conversation about ambivalence, respecting both sides, we can then begin to talk about what would be a healthier way to resolve that ambivalence, and we can move into goal setting. Let's goal set around the part that wants to use the substance to calm down, maybe by teaching alternative skills for managing anxiety. That in turn will support the part that wants to change, to cut back or to stop. And once we've identified those goals, we can now come up with a personalized plan for positive change that can include medications, group support, family interventions, further skill building, addressing all of the complex issues that need to be addressed that support positive change with the addictions. So just in closing with all of this, I've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. There are probably lots of questions, but this is really a kind of a taste of a model that has been evolving over many, many years, you know, and continues to evolve with the participation of my team, the people that come to our trainings. And so, you know, if I've whet your appetite, you might come to our website and you can learn more about all of this work. So thanks so much. Now, Janique and I may have some dialogue, and we'd like to invite everyone here to raise your questions and comments.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. It's amazing when I listen to you. It sounds like exactly what we do. Exactly what we do. It's like we have the same brain. And I want to just talk a little bit about our why we are different, and we also call IRSI because the International Recovery Specialist Institute is such a long name, so we're saying IRSI. And I just wanted to say that IRSI is the premier international and internationally accredited training institution. Students are able to earn internationally accepted education credits, CEUs and CDPs. We are up to date. We are working with evidence-based curriculum, including COVID-19 training. And when I say evidence-based, sometimes I get like, because in addiction and in the brain, it's new things coming out all the time. So you can't really be evidence-based when it comes to addiction, but we try to work with as much as we know, including what Andrew has been talking about today. So trying to stay on top of the things all the time. We have a higher standard of ongoing recovery specialist qualification. You have to be qualified to be able to get a certification through us. We have advanced recovery coaching and a care team support tools. And that I can't even get into today, but it's in the process of making an app, and we are in process of making a global, together with Andrew, more of a global collaboration. Expertise beyond substance use disorder with behavioral disorders and addiction, including food, sex, gambling, internet and gaming, and hazard, so also with money. We literally have people that are have focused on just one thing. So it could be someone that are just focused on like food, because that's really their thing. So so IRSI has a lot of different ones, recovery coaches. We emphasize this on intercultural, international customs or protocol. This is really important. When I came to Sweden and I started working here, and I started working with the international crowd, I lived in New York for a long time. There were so many little things cultural things, religious things, like I had no idea about. So I had to learn. I had to call Evian and say, I'm working with Italian family. How does that work? Because Evian lives in Rome. And so she could tell me all the little clues. So that is something that every training we do in each country is going to be specific for that country in their language. Because America, it's not everything, right? So we're culturally is extremely important. So we are very, very actually proud of that, that we do that. We also teach you how to work with diplomats, celebrities, executives, VIPs, and ultra high net worth individuals. It's incredibly, when we wrote this, people were like, oh, please, they can get anything they want. That is not true. They are two minorities in this world, the very rich and the very poor. They don't get help. And the very rich, you would think they get help, but usually, or a lot of times, they pay for it. And if you pay someone, like, let's just say Michael Jackson, you will pay for something and it could literally kill you because you're so famous that people would do anything for you. So that is a minority. And so we teach you how to work with the minority of that group. Train us with international experiential expertise. So we do have globally, we have had Russian people, we have had all different kind of people. So we get the international trainers. Holistic integrative training approach, which is really important because we do holistically need to look at the families, everything around them, what's not working, what is working, and what's working, let's do that 100 times. Like Andrew said, let's find things that actually work. Highest ethical standards and best practices. And that is something that I was very, very, very stood about, that we do not take per bed fee or kickbacks, or they have lots of different names. Our standard is extremely high, and we go after the best practices. If something happens and you go against that, you would actually lose your license with us. So we're very tough with that. So I just wanted to tell a little bit of why we are different. There are so many schools out there. Some are absolutely excellent. We are not the only one, but what we do have that are different is the internationally global way of looking at it and the harm reduction way of looking at it. So that's why a little bit we're different than the other schools. So we're going to do question and answer soon, Anders, I promise you. Mm-hmm. So our next upcoming class is now in September. It's going to be online. It's the 23rd to the 27th. And so if you are interested in that class, just go on to our website, which is internationalrecovery.net. And then in October, if COVID is letting me fly to Marbella, we'll have Marbella, Spain in October. In Paris, we have November in Paris, and November we also have London. Now, if COVID is still around, we do all of those online. And the upcoming courses for harm reduction is the level 1 is right now, no? It's
actually level 1 will begin next Wednesday, and the way that we're structuring it is 6 weekly sessions, once a week for 2.5 hours. And we already have a nice crowd signed up, but we have some spots that are still available if anyone's interested in joining us.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the level 2 training is available to people who have taken level 1. And so, you know, we've now given level 1 training in, well, about 15 times in New York City, but also in many places around the world. So when we do our level 2 trainings, we get people participating from many places around the globe. So I think, like Janique, you were saying, our trainees and our community is a global community, which has also really informed the work that we do to develop both a sense of how much the same we humans are all around the planet. We grapple with the same basic issues, but that each culture has its own unique ways of struggling and of coping and of creating beauty. So that tension between honoring what we share in common and honoring what's unique about each one of us is really also at the heart of our work. And I think it's something we very much share.
Yes, very much share. And I have taken the level 1, and I have to tell you guys, I really think you should take it. It is extraordinary. You learn harm reduction from the beginning, and then to the what you saw in the end there, the kind of the circle there. And then the level 2, of course, is just upgraded. But if you haven't done harm reduction training yet, I really, really think you should do the level 1. And that starts on the 16th, 17th?
The 16th. Yeah,
16. So sign up. And they sign up through the Center of Optimal Living.
Yeah. They can go to the Center for Optimal Living. We have a training page, and there's access to information about the trainings. And if they wish to register, they can go right through there.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And now, here too, if you do want to, you can go to our site, and you can also actually, I think that you go through our site if you want to, and you do /harm reduction, and that actually will get into Andrew Tatarsky's side. So if you want to buy tickets to recovery coaching and harm reduction, you can do it through the international, the slide that you see here. And now we're going to open up for questions.
Andrew, you have a question from Avion. It's in your chat, private chat.
Okay.
Or Avion, you can open up your mic.
Yeah. I wonder if we can, yeah. Evian, did you have a question for me?
Yes, I did. So I was wondering if you feel there are cases in which harm reduction should not be allowed to be used, or in which you wouldn't want to implement it, such as working with young people whose brains are still developing, and who may perhaps be living with their parents, and one more drug or one more drink or one more joint laced with something could kill them.
What a great and what a complicated question to respond to. But if we go back to what I said at the beginning about harm reduction, is really a set of principles that frame how we set up our relationships with people, right? And meeting people where they are. It really facilitates that. So I think any question about how do we best help people get to their ideal goals has to start with a relationship, right? The key is, how do we set up that relationship? And I think that the harm reduction principles from that point of view really inform beginning work with everyone, including the adolescent. Now, part 2 is that I think that harm reductionists and whoever might identify as a non-harm reductionist, an abstinence-only practitioner, I think the fact is that we all share the same goals.
Yeah.
We all want to help people achieve their ideal, healthiest relationship to substances, whether that is safe use, moderate use, or abstinence. I think we would, or we might even say either non-problematic substance use or abstinence. I think we all basically agree on that. I think one place where there may be major disagreement is how do we best support people in getting there? So how do we engage an adolescent who is engaging in problematic substance use with our shared goal of helping that person either stop using substances or decrease or reduce or eliminate all risky behavior? I think it always begins with a conversation. And one last point, there's a lot that I could say about this, but is that I think sometimes in harm reduction work, we actually get to the point where we no longer feel confident about supporting an ongoing treatment or therapy or counseling relationship. And that then we suggest, or in some cases kind of contract with people about moving into a higher level of care, residential treatment or something. But I think that when we have the strength of a therapeutic relationship as the basis for making that kind of suggestion, there's a greater likelihood that a person will take our recommendation than at the outset when we've just met somebody saying, hey, I don't think you can benefit from outpatient counseling or therapy. You need to go to rehab. If they're not there, they're going to say thank you, but no thank you. So establishing a relationship in which we can do a shared assessment then becomes the basis for making a recommendation that might actually have a positive impact on the person.
Thank you. And thanks for being here too. And
Thanks
for
for
joining.
the question, and thanks for being here yourself.
Some more questions.
I noticed that a friend of mine is in the group as well. So I want to say hi to my friend who I spoke to just yesterday. I don't know if she wants to identify herself and has a question. Maybe not.
No. I think that if you have, Aaron.
Yeah, I'd love to ask a question. Well, actually, what I'd really like to thank you, Andrew. I really enjoyed listening to you then. And, I've always believed that you've got to meet people where they're at. I think that's the basis of any kind of recovery therapy, especially as a recovering addict myself, the idea of not meeting people where they're at straight away puts the authority there, which is such a turn off. But, I was listening to you and I found it really what you were talking, and I've always been a strong believer in anything is better than nothing. So, if you can get someone off heroin and then they smoke dope, whatever it is, to allow them the chance of having a better life is how I see it. But really what I listened to was how much, obviously I follow a 12-step treatment, and that's basically what my recovery coaching has been. But, in early recovery, and I've been clean quite a long time, it was very much about harm reduction. I go to meetings, people never rejected me. They take me back. They say that's better than what you used to be. And, it seems logical. It just seems like the caring way that one's meant to recover, and as there's less and less treatment available to people, especially in England that haven't got any money, it seems, whatever you can slowly coach people into, I think harm reduction's great. Anyway, I really enjoyed listening to you. It was really nice. Thanks, Andrew, Janique, and everyone. Cheers.
Well, thank you so much for your comments and sharing your own personal experience. I think many people who really understand harm reduction in the way that you and I do, and Janique does, see that the 12-step program was one of the original harm reduction programs. The 12-step program doesn't require abstinence. The 12-step program only suggests that there's a desire to stop using or a desire to make positive change. The slogan is keep coming back. You know, you can come back and be welcomed in whatever condition you're in. So it is about unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, and support. And so I absolutely agree that, you know, the 12-step program, I mean, I think there's been a traditional misunderstanding that has kind of led to some split between 12-step, you know, abstinence recovery and harm reduction, which I think it's getting healed now. You know, just like Janique, there are a number of recovery coaching organizations that are redefining the notion of recovery. When does it begin? Does it just begin when you're complete and total abstinent? Or does it begin when you begin to commit to making positive change in your life? You know, better is better. That is Ken Anderson is a harm reductionist who coined that slogan. Better is better.
Better, yeah. and I really like your words, positive change. I like that better than saying you're going to get sober or let's get recovery or, you know, the state, you know, the positive change is such a beautiful word to say. It is. It's like meeting that ugliness of addiction, which it is, and otherwise we wouldn't ask for help, with positive change. It's like, it's just such a beautiful way of thinking of it. I like that very much.
Well, I would add, you know, I guess the way that I have in my own mind put together the notion of recovery is that it entails healing and growth and positive change.
Yes.
Because whether there was suffering that contributed to the addiction or suffering that people have experienced as a result of the addiction, there is healing that needs to take place that we need to support, as well as growth, you know, learning new, more effective ways of caring for ourselves, and then making positive change in our lives.
And I also just want to say, I really like you said that the 12-step programs or AA was the first harm reduction, and it's true. I lived in New York in a very long time, and there is a little AA house there. It's a little blue house with a door, and that's it. It's AA, you know. And it's a guy. He came in there. It's an old man coming in there every day, and he goes, one day back, one day back, one day back. And that for me is harm reduction. You know, he just couldn't. And when he got 7 days, we were applauding, and it was like, whoa, you know. And it was just so, I really felt like, wow. And he got like, oh, I got 7 days, you know, and that's positive change.
Well,
you know?
and let's think about the power of a group or a recovery coach or a therapist saying, you know, you're welcome here, however you can get here. The message that sends that can help heal early trauma, that can help heal, you know, all of the issues that might contribute to the addiction, whether it's shame, guilt, self-hate, mistrust, difficulties feeling like you belong, you know, in a family or in a group. And that kind of unconditional positive regard, when I talk about relationship as healing agent, that's really what I have in mind. And that may need to take place sometimes over years before people feel sufficiently hopeful, connected, engaged, and ready to let go of the addictive behaviors.
Yes.
We have a question from Elizabeth.
Oh, hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, I believe I'm probably the friend Andrew was talking about that spoke yesterday, correct?
Yeah, you are. Hi, nice to see you again.
Hi, nice to see you again. Nice to meet everyone. So I'm a licensed massage therapist. Also, I have personal experience with recovering from addiction, and now have been accidentally thrown into using the techniques I've learned as a massage therapist to help others. I am very grateful that Andrew introduced me to you. And I guess my question is, oh goodness, I have a low battery. My question is for, I just always assumed that anyone who could add help with recovery. Yesterday was the first time I heard the phrase recovery coach. I'm assuming that pretty much everyone needs to be either a licensed social worker or a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, psychologist. In what ways can someone who is not already a mental health professional get involved?
You only have to be a human being to be involved. So you don't have to be a professional in that way. What you will teach, and this is the first thing I say in the day when we start, I say, I'm going to teach you for 5 days. I'm going to teach you how to be a human being again. And it's really how it is. It's being there, showing up, listening, not just with the ears. Lots of models and methods, of course, that you're going to learn that is good to have, But no, you don't have to be in recovery. You can't get drunk, but you don't have to be in recovery. You don't have to have anything. You have to be a human being with a big heart and willing to help. I will give you the tools to do it.
So if I had, I have additional colleagues that have been encouraged by the clients that I have been able to support through their recovery using my massage therapy techniques. Is there a way then we could, so you're teaching people how they can be involved, even if they're not, say, a licensed social worker, they have different areas of expertise?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and that is, I think it's a big thing, because being a recovery coach, it's so large, right? So you will be working with people who kind of matching you. It just happens that way. It just happens that we do. So if you are our massage therapist and that's what you do, I bet you that clients that come to you are the clients you are going to start helping. It's a beautiful phenomena. It really is. So I always trust in that we need you. We need all of you to do this. It's like a ripple effect, right?
Yeah, and if I can make just a quick comment about that, there are many, many places that I've trained in, that I've visited, that have massive amounts of need and have very few licensed professionals that can meet that need. And so they rely on community members, on, local officials, to provide the support. And so I think that this recovery coaching training has very, very wide relevance to these underserved communities that, can't afford licensed professionals or just don't have them around. I'm thinking of the Philippines, of Myanmar, of Lebanon, which is right now experiencing just a terrible, tragic, set of circumstances.
But I do want to say that you do need to have a certification or accreditation to be a recovery coach. And that's only, New York State is really the state that said enough, because there were so many people calling themselves recovery coaches, but they were not. And so a lot of people got very hurt by that. And so New York State said enough. And they are the one that I took the classes with and so forth. So you can't just be a recovery coach. You have to actually be trained to become a recovery coach.
Understandable, not like a life coach, so to speak.
No, even life coach, you should be trained
Oh,
by.
have they changed that now?
Yeah, ICF and ICC, you have to be accredited by them. And I think that's important because we are really working not just with the loved one, we're working with the family.
Right.
No, this is not, I'm not going to just work with you. I like to work with the entire family. And so you really need to be educated to be a recovery coach.
You know, I noticed that Ayesha has a question. Can
Yes.
we go to the?
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful presentation and really, really resonated with me. I'm in Dublin, Ireland, and you probably know that you know, harm reduction got quite a bit of pushback from the Catholic Church. So when it was introduced as a policy, it was kind of introduced through the back door, because the church was all about abstinence only, so I think one of them, even now, it's like it's practiced, but not really. You know, the government hasn't really come out and said, yes, we support harm reduction. So I guess one of the questions that people debate about is that, is it, you know, is harm reduction like one of the challenges is that sometimes the addiction itself doesn't get resolved, but shifts. So from, let's say, alcohol, someone might stop drinking, but will start, you know, but will be addicted to food, or, you know, they'll stop smoking and they'll be addicted to something else. And so is it just switching the addictive behavior? That's one question. And the second thing is it, you know, is it the behavior or is it the personality? And if it's an addictive personality, can that be changed? So sorry, it's like two in one.
No, wait, remind me of the first one, because the second one is so interesting that, is it switching? Right.
Yes.
Well, actually, there are three things. I wanted to address the issue of the church. As I said, I've trained in a number of places, and one of the places, one of my early trainings was in Chile, and we trained to a very large group of people. But before the training, they had the head priest of the organization. It was a Jesuit organization that was sponsoring the training in conjunction with a wonderful social service organization called Fundación Paréntesis. They serve the most marginalized people throughout the country. So the head priest of this organization gave a Christian theological rationale for harm reduction.
Wow.
And in many of my travels, for example, in a training in the Philippines, one in Lebanon, one in Indonesia, I had clergy in the trainings. And the clergy were the most passionate about this work. And
Wow.
some of them even said things like, this is what Jesus taught, you know, that we accompany people, that we accept people unconditionally, that we love people who are suffering. We don't marginalize them. So there actually is a movement in the United States to organize clergy, people of faith or communities of faith around harm reduction. So I do also know that there are certain churches that have different understandings. In fact, there was a Muslim imam who participated in one of my trainings, and he said, you know, in my community, we think about drug use as, you know, as demonic, you know, addiction is, you know, devil possession, you know. But as he went through the training and he began to see how we could think about addiction in a new way, as like along the lines of what we were talking about, a meaningful response to suffering. And we can kind of get inside of it and see that there's a suffering person there who needs support and to find a better way, you know, to care for themselves. You know, he could completely embrace this notion and bring it back into his community. So that's one thing. But I think that harm reduction, we have the ambition. It's not just to help people use more safely, but that is, of course, that's the starting point. If people can't stay alive and healthy, as some people have said, dead people can't recover. So we need to first, help people stabilize, take better care of themselves, stay alive. But addiction, inherent in addiction is suffering. That's, if you're using drugs and you're not suffering, you're not addicted, and, you may not need any help. And I think many people use substances safely, and it enhances the quality of life. But addiction is suffering. So our goal is to reduce suffering to the greatest extent possible. So we begin with certain positive steps, but we want to be as ambitious as we can to reduce suffering as much as we can, whether that's switching from one addiction to another might actually reduce the harm. So that would be a step in the right direction. But if there's still an addictive process there, there's still suffering that we want to help people address. And people want that help. People don't want to suffer unnecessarily. So that becomes the point of connection around which we can engage people and support them on their journey toward their ideal outcome. The final point. Is it about the drug or about the addictive process, or is it about the personality or the underlying issues? I think it's got to be both. It's got to be all. That is, there are underlying vulnerabilities, personality issues, suffering of various kinds. But as people turn to substances and other addictive activities and come to rely on them, they also take on a life of their own. They become deeply ingrained habits. There are neural networks that kind of support the continued use. And so it's not just a matter of helping people with the underlying issues. It's also about helping people with skills and strategies and support for changing the destructive behavior. So that's one of the reasons why I think, and I think Janique agrees, we talk about integrative. We're wanting to work on multiple levels, integrating multiple interventions in a way that's uniquely tailored to each person. And we do that collaboratively. So that was a big question.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. I hope you guys got this. It's just I could listen to you forever because it's so ingrained in my heart how for so long, for 100 years, we have punished people that have an addictive behavior, or we put them in prison, or enough. We must meet people with love and where they're at, and we need to listen, and we need to let them recover.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that looks for them, right? I always say to my clients, I'm gonna read a new book now. You're gonna show me your book, like show me your life. I'm humble enough that we are going to go on a traveling into your future together, right? I'm gonna read your book. What an honor. What an honor. This job is just, woof, it's really beautiful. So,
something else that, came to mind, when we have established the kind of alliances and relationships with people that are possible when we can meet them in these ways, it then becomes more possible to say to somebody out of love and concern, I'm really, really worried about you. I'm really worried, and I'm really concerned that you're engaging in this risky behavior. and that, you know, from one meeting to the next, I may never see you again. And that would be such a tragedy. And that having established that relationship, then we can have a profound impact and say, you know, we've been at this for a while and things are not getting better and you continue to put yourself at risk. And I really think, you know, more support, or possibly going, you know, having a consultation with a medical doctor, or possibly going into a safe, protected space makes sense for you at this point. And then there's a possibility that people will be able to take it in because we've established the trust based on respect and all the things we're talking about. And we've seen that many, many, many times. I want to also say one piece of really important information. 9 years of existence at our center, working from this perspective, we haven't lost one person to lethal overdose.
Yeah.
We have not lost one patient. I feel so proud and humble and honored. You know, the process works.
Yes.
It's about connection.
It's about connection. It's about love, right? About love, connection with another human being and meet them where they're at. I've never lost either a client. And I think that is just, it's just because you're there. You're there. You're not
Aaron
about
made a comment. Aaron had made a comment earlier. Aaron, you want to share your comment?
Yeah, and a number of people liked Aaron's comment.
Oh yeah, no, my comment was, I can't think of a better way of approaching youth. You know, in my experience of, abstinence for a, 15, 16-year-old is just beyond, the idea that that's, and always the, harm reduction is the way to, start with it, someone who's young, I think. Yeah. And also I was thinking that, I've been in recovery a few years and, I've known people that are long time clean that have gone back out there and have lived their lives in a harm reduction way. They've not become a full blown addict again, and they've learned and that's how they, it's not for me that, I don't think I could go that route, but I can see that people, have done it. And, I don't think any approach is the one and only approach. I'm a strong believer in whatever, well, like I said earlier, whatever it takes to get people to find a better way of life is what it's about, But I really enjoyed your talk, and it's great you got him on board, Janique.
Yes.
Yeah, better result there.
We have a question from Susan M.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for your talk. It was so interesting. Like Aaron said, I work with young children at schools, and your approach is just so full of compassion and love. I come from a 12-step background where abstinence is the only way, but I love what you say. I'm so keen, but I haven't actually taken my course yet. I'm due to take my course online in a few weeks' time, but you said that you have a course next week. Am I likely to have information overload if I do both, or am I best waiting until after I've done my course with Janique?
No,
sorry,
I think
that's a very personal, so I'm sorry for everybody else. I apologize.
No,
I personally think you can do both, just because it's two different curriculum. It's just two different ways. I think you can start with Andrew and then do the recovery coach for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I absolutely agree. I mean, it depends on, if you've got the time and you've got the motivation, actually in our course, we have very little required material or activities between sessions there, but there is some suggested reading and that kind of thing. But it's mostly kind of the experience of working with the group as we're doing right now. So, and we also invite and really enjoy having a very diverse group of people in our trainings. As you know, our first training that Janique, you know, she was there. We have students, we have people just beginning their careers, and we have often people who've been working in the field for 30 years in many different kinds of jobs. The diversity, I think, fires up the group experience. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, about adolescence, you know, we might all agree that it would be ideal if younger people did not take mood-altering substances, did not expose them to illicit drugs that can really hurt them. And I think as caring adults and parents, I think we have a right and a responsibility to express our opinions. And that's actually one of there's a wonderful parent education program called Safety First, developed by a harm reductionist named Marcia Rosenbaum. The first part of the program is empowering and encouraging parents to be direct and honest about their wishes for their children and their reasons. Educate kids about the risks, about the problems with emotional development and brain development, and so on. But then the reality, the compassionate, pragmatic part of the harm reduction focus is we know that many young people nonetheless will experiment and will expose themselves to drugs. So we also want to support and arm them with information and skills and strategies and relationships that they can take with them to minimize the potential risk, and to know that they can come to us if and when they begin to struggle and get into trouble. Keeping those lines of communication open seems like the most important thing that we can do for young people.
That is very true.
Yeah, Ayesha is asking about my email address, and I'm happy to give it out to everyone. I can be reached at Tatarsky, A in my last name, Tatarsky @cfol.org. CFOL stands for Center for Optimal Living. Wow. So I'm very happy to hear from anyone and stay in touch. We also have a mailing list. We have lots of activities that we do. Many of them are free. We've also been doing a lot of things with severe sliding scale so that we can, you know, make our activities available to a very, you know, broad, diverse community.
Okay. And of course, everybody can find us on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all of those things. And we stay pretty active. So, any other questions?
You know, I wanted to make a further comment. I think I said before that I think the recovery, you know, there's been this traditional split between, you know, the traditional 12-step recovery world and the harm reduction world. I think that split is healing as the field is growing up and evolving, and that's a wonderful thing. You know, I'm in touch with lots of people who are in traditional 12-step recoveries. I come across them in all of my activities. And just like Aaron said, what I frequently hear is, you know, I used to believe that everybody needed to recover the way that I recovered. But in the last number of years, I'm realizing that what works for me might not necessarily work for you. Or I can share my experience, and if it connects, that's wonderful. If not, you know, there are other pathways. And so this slogan is, I think, increasingly getting out there that there are multiple pathways to and in recovery. And our jobs, I think, are to support people in finding the path that best suits them.
Yeah, Eva, did you have a question? No, okay, you just pushed a little thing there, yeah. Okay, and if you do have questions after this, we are going to put this up online so you can look at this again, and always contact Andrew or me for any questions really about this. And yeah, so happy to thank you, Andrew.
It's my pleasure. And, you know, my pleasure to support your organization,
Thank you.
to help build this global network of like-minded people around the world. I think this is a mission that we share in common. And I feel humbled and feel grateful and excited about, you know, future collaborations.
Yeah. And we do hope after COVID is done or over with or whatever, that Andrew also will come with us when we do the classes. So I don't speak about harm reduction, that Andrew speak about that. That's his thing. So you will be included in the classes. So hopefully that will happen soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us as well.
Yeah, thank you everybody so very much for being here. Bye.
Bye.